Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Outstanding. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. For a roll call, we have newly elected director. Is it Dave? Is that how you pronounce it? Your last name? Dane. Okay, sorry. Director Dane, Director Ledoux, myself, Director Carey, Director Kincaid, and our student rep, Ava. Hello, Ava. How's it going? I'd like to make a motion to excuse Director Veach due to personal conflict. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made in second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Standing. All right. Now, one of the coolest things that we get to do, oath of office. Dr. Milton, you want to take it?
Bill, if you join me up here. Where do you want? If you come stand over here. So if you raise your right hand. I, Bill Dean. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
And laws of the United States.
and laws of the United States
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington.
And I will faithfully and partially perform.
Faithfully, partially,
And discharge the duties of the office of Granite Falls School District Director.
discharge the duties of the Granite Falls District Director to,
According to the law, to the best of my ability.
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
Welcome.
So good to have you, Director Dane. All right. Next is board comments. Director Dane, this is just where we, as individual board directors, can each just say a couple of minutes for anything that's on our mind, anything pertinent to the school district or anything like that. We kind of do kind of a potpourri and choose different people. I won't make you go first. Director Ledoux, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, overall, everybody's getting back in the swing of things after spring break. So it's like every time we have either winter break or spring break, there's the little winding back up. Everybody in this room knows a lot better than I do that it takes at least a week to get everybody back up. So I'm excited to hear from Monte Cristo tonight about building that momentum. I've looked through the presentation so far tonight. Things looking up. I'm excited to hear from your perspective personally. Outside of that, that's pretty much it. And I'll have quite a few questions, I'm sure, but excited to be here tonight. Thank you for having us.
Outstanding. Do you want to go next, Director Kincaid?
Sure.
There you go. Go ahead.
I would try to not be too long-winded. I just made brief notes, so bear with me if I stumble on my words. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago now about special ed and IEPs and things like that. And I didn't say a lot at the time because I wanted things to marinate in my brain. So I have some things to say about that. One of the things that I am concerned with is the amount of time that it takes for students to get IEPs. And here's my reasoning behind that. I got to witness, I had some teachers invite me into their classrooms to see how important paras are to them, the supports that they need, and also in classrooms that don't have that support. There are students who are waiting for their IEPs and they don't have supports in the classroom, and it is creating dangerous and interrupted education, and they're not getting those supports because they don't have those IEPs. So we're leaving these classrooms just at will until these things are in place. And it's doing more damage than you think it could be doing. The reason I say that is I have a daughter who has experienced classrooms with a lot of behaviors and a lot of issues. And it started way back in kindergarten, way before COVID. So it's not necessarily a COVID issue, although that has made things worse. But my daughter loved school. She loved her teacher. She loved going to school. She loved everything about school. She would go home and play school with her stuffed animals. It was the best thing to her. She had a student in her classroom who was waiting for an IEP, and there was no supports in that classroom. The classroom was evacuated on a daily basis. My daughter became terrified. I try not to cry. She became terrified to go to school. School was no longer a place where she wanted to be. Thankfully, that was the catalyst for my husband and I to start getting involved in school more, and how I'm in the seat today, or the reason why I'm in the seat today, because we decided to fight for our daughter, and all the other kids in that classroom. It's not just the students who are having issues that need support. They need an education, but the rest of the classroom oftentimes gets set aside. We're in a culture where if you are someone who reads the Bible or understands any of those stories, there's kind of a story about having a flock of sheep and a lamb goes stray, and you should leave your flock behind and go after the lamb. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately to some, we live in this culture where we go after the lamb and we leave the herd behind, and that herd is struggling. They're left behind. Their education is nil because the students that need support are getting more of the attention and the rest are being left behind. And that being said, there are things in the classroom that are frustrating as a parent. So my daughter now, she's been in classrooms with lots and lots of behaviors, and those students are the focus. The day is like, thankfully she's actually been moved to a different classroom and things have been better since then. But because of that focus on the behaviors, not a lot of education is happening. And the evidence of that is that my daughter is in 4th grade and I was told that she's at a 2nd grade math level. That's incredibly frustrating, especially for me because I am a teacher and it's frustrating. But she's not getting the support she needs for math. And I'm told it's because she's on the bubble. She doesn't suck enough. And so I don't know what to do about that. And though I worry for those children who are, you know, part of the flock that are being left behind when we're focusing on all of these behaviors. So when we're talking about paraprofessionals, we're talking about supports in the classroom. It's not just for those students who have or need IEPs. It's for the rest of them as well. And I want us to really think about that when we think about special ed and stuff, that support is not just for those kids with the IEPs and behaviors. It's for the whole classroom so that we can have a classroom that is safe and uninterrupted education, making every student can get what they deserve. And then one thing that I was thinking about the other day, just in general, is that as a district, as a board, everything, we're very reactive on a lot of things. We don't really go into action until we need to. And I would like us to be, and this is across the board in all different areas, I would like us to be more proactive and seeking out how we can solve problems before they even exist. So that's all I have.
Any clarifying questions or anything? I just have one.
Yeah,
So you said that your concern was the time frame it took for students to get IEPs.
Oh, yes.
And then I think I
Sorry.
heard you say that maybe it was interruptions in the classroom. Just want to be clear.
Yeah, let me clarify that for you. So for instance, in my daughter's classroom, the student that she had in her classroom was waiting for an IEP and it took over 6 months for him to get one. In that 6 months time, there was no support in the classroom. Now this was that specific situation was when she was in kindergarten. So that was several years ago. It was a different superintendent, a different principal, a different atmosphere, and things changed greatly for the better. And I don't want it to go back to that. And I've spoken to some teachers and they are afraid that things are going to go back to that. And they don't want it to be that way at all. There are still students who are in those same classrooms who don't have their IEPs. So they don't have the support they need in that classroom. And it's scary that, you know, why does it take an IEP to make a classroom safe and education to happen? why can't we have support in a classroom while we're waiting for an IEP to happen? And so that's kind of my concern. We're leaving these classrooms just to, to their own devices, and we don't have that support in there, so.
Anything else? Thanks for sharing, Director Kincaid.
Mhm.
Ava, you have anything? No? Okay. I had just a couple of things. I'll talk some more at the legislative portion of it. However, I received a call, I think it was yesterday, from one of our representatives in the 39th who were discussing an amendment to safety net. I was thankful to be able to get a hold of Marshall that would hopefully move the bar for reimbursement for safety net down to 2,000 students, which is at grant level. And then another conflicting, another representative actually was trying to move it up to 3,000, and I'm not really sure where the which amendment passed or what, but want to thank Marshall for being super available for a last minute call, and hopeful that our representatives are going to help get that bar down to 2,000. Getting paid quarterly for safety net would really help our cash flow rather than waiting until the end of the year and hoping and not knowing what we're going to get and stuff like that. So some positive movement. I'll talk more about kind of the outlook on an increase of SPED, regionalization and stuff like that in my legislative presentation. Other than that, I again just wanted to welcome Director Dane, and it feels good to have a board, a full board again, and really looking forward to the good work that we can all do. All right.
Any comments from Director Dane?
Oh, gosh, Director Dane, I'm sorry. I'm used to going last. I apologize.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to come and sit on the board. I look forward to getting to know all of you and to really dive into all of the comments that are made and the challenges that the school board and the district face. And tonight, that's where I'm going to leave my comments, because I don't have a lot to share as far as the issues going forward, but I look forward to participating.
Outstanding. Thank you for the reminder, Director Ledoux. Okay, moving on to item 3A, MC annual report presented by Paige and Joelle. I'll turn it over to Dr. Middleton.
All right, thank you. I'm excited for tonight's presentation by Monte Cristo administration. And what's really exciting is we've talked a lot about professional learning communities. As a board, you've talked a lot about data-driven decisions. And we've also talked throughout this year that our schools are on a continuum. Some are the early stages of PLCs, some are a little bit further down the line. But when we look at Monte Cristo, I'm just excited because their PLCs on Wednesdays are doing the work. And I appreciate the leadership of Mrs. Wynn and Ms. Wright. And so I turn it over to them. And I know that they want to present tonight, and they'll be happy to field any questions. And like all presentations, if we have the answer right there, great. And we need to do a follow-up and get back to you, that's always welcome as well. So.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to Monte Cristo Elementary. We want to start off with where we ended last school year by reviewing last year's school improvement plan goals. For the 21-22 goals, the first goal, 1, in collaboration with staff, students, and parents, students performing at a tier 1 level in the math fall iReady benchmark assessment will increase from 12% of our students to 40% for all of our students, and will increase from 4% to 10% for our students receiving special education services. For goal 2, in collaboration with staff, students, and parents, student performing at a Tier 1 level in the reading fall already benchmark assessment will increase from 29% of our students to 50% for all of our students, and will increase from 13% to 19% for our students receiving special education services. Last year, we had 2 school improvement goals, each with an embedded goal. Our school improvement math goal was for 40% of our students to be at Tier 1. Our spring diagnostic results showed 39% at Tier 1. We came close, but fell short of making our math Tier 1 goal. However, we did meet our embedded math goal of 10% of our students with IEPs at Tier 1. We had 12% make it to Tier 1. An IEP is an individualized educational plan, which means they are students in special education. Last year, our reading goal was to have 50% of our students at Tier 1. We met our goal with exactly 50%. Our embedded reading goal was also achieved. Our goal was for 19% of our students with IEPs to be at a Tier 1, and we had 21% of our students in special education make it to Tier 1.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Do you want us to ask questions as they come up, or wait till you guys get to the end and then we can ask our questions?
Could
Just
you
didn't know
wait, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
In order to be efficient with our time, we have put the abridged version of each goal in our presentation. For our first goal, students performing at a Tier 1 level in math will increase from 36% of our students spring 2022 to 50% of our students in spring 2023. As we crafted our goals, we based them off of our spring 2022 data. We did not anticipate the amount of summer regression that our data shows. As you can see here, we started this school year at 10% of our students at Tier 1 in math. We wanted to set high goals for ourselves, and when you look at our data, it might not appear to be a lot of growth. However, our goal was for the number of students in our building to be at grade level, which is Tier 1. We need to consider that most of our building began the year at 1 or 2 grade levels below standard. We moved 15% of our students from Tier 3 to Tier 2, and 14% of our students went from Tier 2 to Tier 1. That means that 29% of our students have moved up a full grade level in math in just 5 months. Within goal number 1 is the embedded goal that states students in IEPs performing at a Tier 1 level math will increase from 12% of our students spring 2022 to 18% of our students in spring 2023. We selected this goal because our students receiving special education services are a focus group based on our extremely low state test data, and to be aligned with our Granite Falls School District special education goal. During benchmark 1, there were 2 students at Tier 1 in September 2022, and 6 students were at Tier 1 in January 2023, which resulted in 5% growth. When you look at the red section, there were 63 students at Tier 3 in September, and 52 students were at Tier 3 in January, with 13% growth moving out of Tier 3.
Our reading goal states that students performing at a Tier 1 level in reading will increase from 50% of our students from spring 2022 to 65% of our students in spring 2023. From September to January, we have increased 11%. In order to meet our SIP goal of 65% of students at Tier 1, we will need to increase 25% more. If you take a closer look at the tiers, we moved 12% of our students out of Tier 3, the red section, to Tier 2, and 11% of our students went from Tier 2 to Tier 1. That means that 23% of our students have moved up a full grade level in reading in just 5 months. Remember, these are our scores from January, and we have continued our good work in our small group instruction, our reading interventions with fluency and phonics, and more. We hope to see a continued trajectory of growth when we take the iReady diagnostic next week. Within goal number 2 is the embedded goal that states students with IEPs performing at a tier 1 level in reading will increase from 21% of our students from spring 2022 to 28% of our students in spring 2023. Taking a closer look, you'll see that we ended last year with 21% of our students at a tier 1 level. 13 students were at tier 1 in September, which is 15% of our students with IEPs. 15 students were at tier 1 in January, which is 18% of our students with IEPs. So that's an increase of 3% growth. If you take a look at the red section, our tier 3 data, you'll see that 60 students were at tier 3 in September, which is 71% of our students with IEPs. And now 56 students were at tier 3 in January, which is 66% of our students with IEPs. That shows us that 5% of our students with IEPs were able to move out of tier 3 in just 5 months. In order to meet our embedded goal in reading, we need to have 10% more of our students with IEPs reach that tier 1 level. Our third school improvement goal was around the area of social emotional learning. Goal number 3 states that we will establish a minimum score of 1 for 80% of our tier 1 indicators of the PBIS 2.0 tiered fidelity inventory by June 30th, 2020. The tiered fidelity inventory assesses the level of school-wide PBIS implementation you have established in your building. PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports. Part of our school culture and climate is based on creating efficient systems of support to help students in the areas of social emotional learning and positive behavior choices. When implementing PBIS practices in your school, we work on ways to support all students. Those are referred to as tier 1 supports. Then we create supports to help our tier 2 students. These are the students that need some extra support when compared to the rest of the student body. Lastly, we create systems to support the students that struggle the most with behavior choices and social emotional skills. These students are considered tier 3. Monte Cristo has been working on implementing PBIS to varying degrees over the years. Now, with consistent leadership, we have been able to refine our systems of support for students. The first step to bringing positive change to a building is to have really solid tier 1 practices in place. For our third goal, we decided to assess how well have we established our tier 1 practices and systems. We knew that this is how we would have the most impact on our school climate. On this survey, you can score at a level of 0, 1, or 2. And our goal was to have 80% of the indicators at a minimum score of 1. A score of 1 means that you have introduced and implemented systems and you've had some success. There's still some areas to be ironed out, but overall it's up and running. When our leadership team completed our initial assessment in October, it turns out that we already had 85% of those indicators at a level 1 or higher. That's good news. When we reassess at the end of the year, we're hoping to have many of our indicators with a score of 2. A score of 2 means systems are well established and working well to support all students.
As mentioned previously, we reviewed our spring 2022 data and selected the goal accordingly with the assistance and collaboration of our district coach, leadership team, building staff, district administrators, and Mountain Wage Elementary administrators. The data was analyzed using our grades 3 to 5 iReady diagnostic data. The subgroups were analyzed using the Smarter Balance assessment data, iReady data, building leaders input, and Swiss data. We focused our embedded goals on students with IEPs because it's aligned with our district-wide goal of supporting students in special education. Some of our most impactful actions include consistent and effective professional learning communities, planning strategies, and instruction around iReady data, creating ongoing professional development, goal setting with students, and data checks. We began providing professional development for small group instruction last school year. We continued that professional learning this year. We had our 3rd grade team model small groups for their colleagues and a group of teacher leaders model goal conferences. In addition, we also communicated iReady data to families at family events and during conferences.
Each of these action steps were critical in our growth as a staff and a school community. We monitored our progress throughout the year. We know that our efforts have been effective because we consistently observe these things happening in the classrooms. When we observe classroom instruction and professional learning communities across grade levels, we see teachers collecting and analyzing data, progress monitoring of iReady lessons, celebrations of student success, grade level planning, sharing strategies, small group instruction, and differentiation. We want to be transparent about some of the barriers we're facing at Monte Cristo Elementary. Although we're no longer in the midst of a pandemic, we have had a large influx of student illnesses and transportation issues which affect attendance. We've had to encourage staff commitment to school initiatives and strengthen our school culture. We've had to work on building significant social emotional skills and establishing school-wide behavior expectations with our students. Last year, we had 165 suspensions due to big behaviors. This year, as of April, we've only had 22 suspensions. It is evident that when you invest in supporting students and creating effective action plans, you see results.
In summary, we have been working hard to build achievement with our students. As a staff, we have been intentional about supporting each other in our professional growth and development. Whenever you want to see growth and change, it takes time and commitment. Not only are we working on improving academic achievement, but we are doing the hard work of building student habits as learners. In time, we hope to see less summer regression and more continued growth and progress. Before we wrap up, I do want to do a shout out for our Monte Cristo staff, families, students, and our supporters. We have some staff here today, and I know we have staff members and families watching via Zoom. A shout out to you all for the growth that we have made. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you guys so much for presenting. So love to open it up to questions. Is there anybody that wants to go first that has something Vernon that want to talk about? Dr. Ledoux?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that it's nothing new. It's just the summer fallback or the summer regression, so to speak. I look at the numbers of, we'll say tier one. Last year, we ended at 50% of students at tier one, or 50% of students at tier one. I believe that was for reading. Mm-hmm. And now we're like clawing back to get back to even. And that even still seems like a big ask, because at the end of this year, we have to go from 24 to 50%. So that's more than doubling in a 3-4 month period. So it's pretty steep. And where I'm curious to see also is, so we did see the tier 2 results in effect this year so far, it looks like, by how many people moved out of tier 3, right? What's yellow or the tier 2 results looking like year over year? Are those also pretty stagnant? Because my fear, what I see is then, okay, we don't hit 50% again this year in reading and we're regressing. Because what I've noticed across the district is that we're seeing this chasm and this divide where you start in kindergarten and they'll grow up really quick, and by the end of the year, I don't know, 66% or 70% are in that tier 1. But then year in and year out, that green just keeps shrinking, the yellow keeps shrinking, and that red is just roaring up through the years. And so my concern, I'm assuming, right, the summer fallback leg has a large part to do with it. But I'm just trying to figure out, is like, what are we doing? Because yes, over time, the hope is that it will change, but are we doing anything in particular during the summer to help enable that learning to continue and that fallback not to be so dramatic?
And before you answer that, just to pop in, because we have some people that are probably hearing this for the first time, can you talk about the difference, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, what that means too, if you don't mind?
Sure. So tier 1 is at grade level. Tier 2, especially because we work with grades 3 through 5. And so tier 2 is you're considered about 1 grade level below. And tier 3 is 2 or more grade levels below. So when you're looking at data in kindergarten, you can't be a grade level
Right.
below. I mean, you can maybe be 1 grade level, but you can't be multiple years below because you're learning that you're trying to accomplish in kindergarten. But as you get older,
Mhm.
the gap can be larger. So some of those kids in tier 3 are 3 grade levels below.
Yeah.
Maybe they have an IEP or they're receiving title intervention services. So that's what the tiers mean.
We do offer summer school, that is for targeted students. That's another way that we can continue to offer support, is open it up for more students. But then we need your assistance with that. I'm asking from the school board is that we need the financial support to make that happen.
Yeah.
We need teachers to be available over the summer to teach. There are some barriers that we would love to have more students come to summer school, but then we also need families committed to enrolling their students over the summer, because when we try to get them there, they don't come.
And it's typically a half-day format. And if you're a working family, sometimes the schedule doesn't allow for their kids to be gone to school for a half day. And then how are they getting home?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like one area, I just even also think of, even throughout the school year, I think a lot of parents want to help. They just still also have no idea how. And so finding maybe different ways that during the summer, not that it was perfect, but I know in the past that some would do, activity books or something during the summer, and if that's not just, leaning on your educational expertise or that of the educators that are roaming the halls each day, of how can we inform parents, your student's going to be out of the classroom. Here are some best practices, right? Make sure that they're reading X amount a week. Make sure that they're doing this, that, the other. Here are some recommendations, right? It could be an email or paper format or something, just so that at least they know, because I think there will still be the people that, will say, well, it's the summer, let the kids, roam free or whatever. But I think there probably is a large population that says, I'd love to help my kid through the summer, I just don't know what to do. So I think maybe some of that, and that's not just at this school, right? That's across the district. And actually, I asked my second question within there too, is do you know off the top of your head how the tier 2 results look year over year?
The tier 2 results are tricky because if there's some overlap, right? You have the students that were tier 2 at the beginning of the year that moved to green. So tier 2 is not the same group of kids, because then you have the red that move up.
Yep.
So you'd have to look by the itemized of each student, because the numbers are a little bit misleading when you look at that. But in general, when red decreases, yellow increases.
Yeah, or I guess in matter of fact, would be better the red year over year, right? The tier 3 year over year, is that shrinking year over year, even if by 1% or 2%?
At Monte Cristo, we are seeing progress.
Okay.
And that's very encouraging.
Okay.
We've been working very hard with small group instruction. We've been working with phonics intervention. We still have students who can't even read.
Yeah.
So that has been really our focus. We've also worked with teachers where we're all aligned, doing the same exact things and not scattered all over the place. What I noticed is professional learning communities have helped our teachers immensely, making sure that they have that designated time, that commitment to analyzing data, planning together, talking about strategies, and then really implementing it.
Okay. And then one other thing to piggyback off of Director Kincaid, board comments. So I know that there have been, classrooms that have been disrupted by behavioral. I'm curious, just as people that are obviously in school on a day-to-day basis, how often, because obviously if it's in a classroom, that classroom could be affected every single day. But out of the however many classrooms that are within the walls of Monte Cristo, how many, like what percentage would you say that takes up? Because we're also, trying to figure out from a support, somebody that can come in and de-escalate the situation. Is that something that 1 or 2 people in the building need to know how to do? Or is that something that every teacher needs to know how to do because it's so prevalent in every single classroom? So if you could just elaborate on what you see within the classrooms.
Sure, I'll share some and then you can join in. What we're noticing is 5 to 8 students in each classroom that have behaviors that
Okay.
who need support. It's better this year compared to last year, but the behaviors are still there.
Mhm.
And teachers are focused on teaching.
Yep.
And they have majority of the class to support. So it's very challenging for them,
Mhm.
even if they had the time or the energy, their focus is instruction. So that's an area there where we are trying to provide them with stronger classroom management so that they can help themselves and the students at the moment.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help the bigger problem.
This year, Mrs. Nguyen and I offered a class for our teachers called Classroom Management 2.0
Mhm.
to be able to help support our beginning teachers, but also to strengthen the skills in all of our staff, anyone who wanted to attend, to be able to refine and set up your classroom instruction and your routines and procedures really effectively to minimize disruptions so that more instruction can take place. So I think that was one way that we tried to make an impact. Our students, we do have a lot of struggles that they are learning as a society, I would say,
Yeah.
to function in groups at a school and not a home environment. And
Yeah.
that is a big learning curve for us, but we are making gains. We have some amazingly talented teachers at de-escalating students. But like Mrs. Nguyen mentioned, they're balancing a lot in the
Mhm.
classroom. We have 2 incredible people in our success room that are behavior support paras, as well as a counselor and our student support advocate, and they are all working full-time and probably could work 10 hours extra a day to support fully all that we
Yeah.
want to do. But we have a great team where they're very talented at supporting kids as best as we can.
And if you really want to see what's happening with our classes, I encourage you to come into the building and spend not only one day, but continuous 3 days or the entire week, if possible, due to your work schedule. I think that will give you a bigger picture of what's going on.
Okay. So you're saying, when you say 5 to 8 students per class, you're talking about classroom, not grade level class?
That's
Per
correct.
classroom, there's that many big behaviors.
Okay, so it's like a 25 to 35%.
And I would say, in addition to that, we have tier 2 behaviors. Those are our tier 3 behaviors. Yeah, like we shared earlier, that those are the ones that have individual behavior plans,
Mhm.
are needing a lot of frequent teacher reminders, a ton of teacher time is investing in supporting them. And it's for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Some are working with IEP goals and social skills, some are coming from places of trauma,
Mhm.
some are just learning what it means to be a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader right now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but we have both our student counselor has been doing focus skills groups and groups for a variety of reasons. Our health teacher has been doing coaching clubs to help build social emotional learning. And so we've been trying to hit it from as many angles as we can to support them.
Okay.
But it's still a work in progress.
And if you notice, both Ms. Wright and I are wearing running shoes. We are running all day.
Yeah.
Supporting students. And if you come in and join us, you will see, we're not sitting at our desk. We are really in classrooms and helping students, the 5 to 8 in each classroom
Yeah.
that need that extra support.
And last one, I think. When you see that, because I know there's the COVID effect, right, which is everybody's losing a year or two of not only the true in-school process, but maturity level as well, right? 5th grader could be acting more like a 3rd grader, and propagate that throughout all. When we're seeing the behavioral, how much do you attribute that, and how are we seeing it adjust over time? It might still be a little too early, but is this more of something where there has to be a long-term solution in place because we just have 25 to 35% of the students that are going to be in behavioral thing, and that's just a thing that we're going with? Or is it that because of something like COVID, we see that there's this lagging effect that we need something in place for the next 2-3 years, but we're hoping to grow out of that.
Well, we were very hopeful, even with this year, going from 165 suspensions
Yeah.
to 22 suspensions. I mean, what a big difference.
Yeah.
And that was because we were so intentional. It was no more, we're going to suspend you because you're making a threat that's not credible, right? We're going to take the time to reteach. We're going to then discuss with you about how that affects your relationships with other people. We are going to take the time to say, we're not sending you home so you can sit at home. We are going to keep you at school and you are going to do community service and teach them how to be a part of the community.
Yeah.
So we changed our plan, we changed our action plans, and that allowed them to see that school is where they need to be.
That's helpful. I think that's it for me for now.
Outstanding. I've got some, but Director Kincaid, do you have?
I think Peter actually asked all the ones that I had, so I'm good for right now.
Perfect. Okay. Joel, Paige, you guys, I know that these results come from just an extreme amount of hard work and dedication by you and your staff. And I want to thank you guys because I know that you work your tails off to dedicate to our students and our families to get here. So I really appreciate the hard work and dedication. There's many times I drive here at night, past here to get to home, and I see your cars parked out 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night, as well as a parking lot with a ton of staff in it. So I know that you guys are putting the hard work, and don't take any of my questions as minimizing or trying to belie that or anything like that. I know that there's been extreme amount. This is just for me to kind of understand, where we're at, where we're going and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I started there so that you guys don't think that I know that you are unbelievably dedicated to our students and our families. I just wanted to be clear on the results that you were giving us, just because I guess when we originally were talking about this, I guess I visualized it a little bit different. You talk about the, tier 1 will increase from 12% for our students to 40% for all of our students, and will increase 4 to 10 for our students receiving special education services. And the results you're giving, obviously, you're averaging that for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, over those 3 grades, you're at 39% or something like that. I guess mentally, and this could certainly be my fault, when I was originally processing that, I guess I was thinking 40% at 3rd, 40%, a minimum of 40% at each grade level. And again, that could be completely the reason I bring it up is just to try to understand your goal, your 22-23 goal. Again, are you thinking of that as kind of an average across all grade levels?
So iReady has lots of reports that are helpful for us. And it can let you disaggregate data by grade level, but it's not an average. It gives you the whole total of students. It says, okay, this many is grades 3 through 5 are at grade level out of this many students. And so it's able to tell us that when it came to the students with IEPs, we were able to create a subgroup for anyone in our building that has an IEP. And it's not an average either. It's an actual calculation of, we have this many students. We gave some of the student numbers, and that's that out of the students with IEPs. So the whole is the total population of students in special education at our building. And then the part, or the percentage, is the actual number of students that have met tier 1 grade level.
Okay, I'm glad I asked the question. So I guess let me just make sure, repeat it so I understand. So the 40,
I can refer to any slide if you want to.
Yeah, it was like the first slide you guys had. So I'm looking at the 21-22 goal, and you say tier 1 level in the math fall iReady benchmark will increase from 12 to 40. And then when I was looking at the data, obviously you're at 43, 34, 32, and I'm assuming the 39 is an average of those 3 grades.
Not an average,
Not
because the size of each grade level is very different. So a percentage of 43% of 4th grade is, let's say it had us 140 kids in it, versus 3rd grade might have had a lot fewer. The percentages change when the total number changes. And so in like the principle of it is it's about an average, but it's not actually calculated like an average. So those are the grade level breakdowns, but if you were to count up all of the students, and calculated, our total was 39% of the total number of students.
Okay,
And that one. I just did math.
but I guess that, just going one step forward,
Yeah.
that 40% though is spread across those three grades,
Yes.
not 40% of the third graders, 40% of the fourth
Right.
graders, 40%. And that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Appreciate is that, I guess, I thought, and I'm completely okay with being wrong here, that it was going to be 40% at each grade level. And so the only reason I bring that up is just to say, so the same kind of, let's call it calculation will be used for the 22-23. Okay.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize too, where each of those grade levels were at the beginning of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And what foundational skills did they not do as well as they could have? So, for example, our third graders, now this is last year's data, right?
Mhm.
End of the year data. But our third graders this year, we identified as a team with our third grade teachers that they were lacking in phonics skills, so many of them, because the years they missed were K1, 2. And so for them, we had to do a lot of extra intentional small group instruction around phonics, where in years past, we haven't had to. So those fifth grade students received their first kindergarten, first grade year. So their numbers might be different that impact the numbers we see at each grade level.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate you walking me through that. I was wondering next if you could, moving on to your 22-23 goals. The PBIS goal, goal number 3. I was hoping you could just dial into that a little bit more, because I was trying to figure out where we're at. So the goal is to be at 80% on tier 1. It appears like you guys right now are at 85, but that's at a score of 1 or 2. So I was trying to figure out, does that mean that you're there, you met it, or is there still a gap that you're trying to fill, or can you?
We met it,
Oh, okay.
and our goal now is to keep going and increase in our progress and what we're doing for the school.
Yeah.
So, with that.
So so a 2 is better than a 1?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's opposite, obviously, of the other goals, is for tier 2 is worse than the other one. So that's why I'm asking the question too.
Good question.
Yes.
Good question.
Okay, so you're good there. We're on track.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously there's still some room on the other goals. Do you feel like we have this, we're where we want to be at this point of the school year? Is there any goals where you're like, I would have hoped to have been a little bit further along? Can you talk through that a little bit too?
Well, in January, I believe, we had a meeting with all of our leaders there, and we were celebrating Monte Cristo, where we were the only school that made the most progress across the board, grades 3 through 5th. So we were really excited at that moment in time that we were making progress and that we were on track and hopefully making our goals at the end of the school year.
Outstanding. So go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say, one thing to consider also is, if you were to ask any of our teachers, they would share the pains, but the joys of the fact that we do our end of the year assessment for iReady in April. We aren't done teaching yet. And so we still teach during the SBA between sessions and all the way till June, but we call it our end of the year data in April, because we need it for, determining who's going to summer school and a variety of purposes, and we don't want to over test during the SBA testing. But the encouraging part of that is whatever our numbers are, and we may or may not hit our goal this year in reading and math, but we're hoping to, is that we're still not done with them yet. We're still going to be teaching them all the way to the end of the year.
Great segue. So I guess when I'm looking at your actions to meet goals, can you just quickly just talk about, are any of those actions new things that you're trying this year that you haven't tried before, or, things that you're, I guess, just kind of quickly just walk through that of, or if there are things, hey, we've done this, we're good at this, we know how to do this, those types of things. And then just a follow up to that, I've heard a number of times about the strength in your PLCs here really being data focused. I was hoping that you could also just talk about your PLCs a little bit too, please.
Sure, there's so much to share. I hope you have a lot of time. everything that we've done here, we did last year. We were just strengthening it to make it better. But some of the things that are different is we made sure Ms. Wright and I went into lunch times and classrooms to encourage students that they can do it, stay focused, try their best when it comes to the iReady diagnostic assessment. And then also for their individual plans and their lessons, we were cheering them on, something that we did not do personally last year. And we noticed that that helped with their confidence. And that's what a lot of our young students needed. Another thing that we tried was at events. If you were able to come to one of our Monte Cristo events, you'll notice me grabbing the microphone and sharing iReady data with families and celebrating the progress that we're making, and everyone gets excited to hear that. So that's something we didn't do last year, but we're doing this year also.
Additionally, we have really made a greater intention this year on asking our staff to be using learning targets with each lesson, specific learning targets as in the form of ICANN statements, as well as success criteria. And that's been something that's been an expectation, but often got overlooked. And this year, we not only did we ask that of them, but we expected it when we would come into classrooms. We took photos of it on their board and we shared it out in our staff newsletters, and we bragged about the teachers who are doing well with it. And you walk into a classroom now and they all have learning targets, they all have success criteria. Additionally, they have anchor charts, which can maximize your instructional time if you're not constantly recreating it on the whiteboard every time. When you have this lovely anchor chart that is a reference tool that kids can always refer back to, they're imprinting it in their memory a little more. So we've been a little bit more intentional with the ways we support our staff that will help support them be able to effectively teach.
And I believe another action was really fostering trust. If we have fear amongst our staff, our teachers, or judgments about each other's instructions, that's a barrier. For us, that was the first discussion we had during our solution tree professional development that was offered by our wonderful district. And that allowed us as leaders to have those discussions with our teachers. What is the elephant in the room? Let's talk about that. How are we going to overcome that so we can do what's best for students? The elephant in the room is we're afraid that we're going to be judged. We're afraid there's going to be competition amongst each other. We're afraid the data is going to be used against us. Once we clear that and we help them understand, look, we're here to support you. This is about students. We are not going to ask you, why aren't you doing this at 40%? And what are you doing wrong? We're saying, what supports do you need? We're saying, how can I model for you the strategy that you need to help students be successful? So we were changing our action plan to support our staff. And that really fostered trust and confidence in our staff members. And when you attend professional learning communities at each grade level teams, you will see that.
And to speak to your second question about kind of the real life application of how are these PLCs benefiting our students. For example, our fourth grade team, when they are meeting and they're looking at their data, and they just recently, poured through a bunch of standards on multiplication. And they meet, they examine their data, and then they actually cluster students by ability. And then they have something, we've been doing this for a few years now, called Fit Time, Focused Instruction Time. And they send the kids to different teachers, so one teacher can hone in on this level of ability, reteaching something that they taught before, so that they are able to get it again, get more exposure. And if a student is excelling in that standard, they're getting enrichment. And if they're close, but they're just not quite there, they just need a little bit more practice, they're getting that with this teacher. And if they're really struggling, they're working at a little bit more of a conceptual level. And so that's one thing the fourth grade team, but also our third and fifth grade team have been doing in their PLCs when they're examining that data. It's informing how they're teaching in their small groups.
And so you guys, what I hear is you're really data focused in those PLCs, identifying those students that need additional support, figuring out how to provide that additional support and really kind of leaning into that in an intentional way. I appreciate that. That's exactly what I think PLC should be focused on. One other thing, just on the actions and stuff, and I've talked about this at other school presentations that we've had. And kudos to Director Kincaid for really kind of opening up my eyes, as well as going to the National School Board Association. And really kind of, this will almost sound crazy when I say it, but really, I guess, being forced to focus again on how desperate we need that parent-school partnership if we have any hope of reaching any improved educational outcome, especially in a time when parents were really kind of said, hey, no, we got this, right? We can't, we really can't include you in education due to, obviously the challenges with COVID and stuff like that. And I know Director Kincaid is working on a parent-school partnership policy that the board is working on. And I've asked this of others, I don't see specifically any action related specifically to, really engaging parents and letting them know, here's the piece of the puzzle that I need for you to do. Even when you look at the summer slip, and you guys very correctly talking about, well, there's a financial piece, there's a parent piece, will the parents come, and all of that stuff. I think one of the challenges that we face, and I've been attending these kind of monthly family school partnership discussions that's put on by the National PTA, where they're talking about the data that they've got from surveys that talks about parents and how they just don't know necessarily where they fit, right? Where they fit, what's being asked of them, what needs to be done kind of specifically. So they're just kind of going, I guess the teachers kind of have this, and how we've slided to kind of a communication-based, be it kind of automated systems or systems where you have to kind of go out and search for the information skyward, those types of things. And, short of, okay, does my kid have an F? Right. And we all, me as a parent, I have the grade level where I will get, engaged with my student and go, oh, something's wrong. Right. And, that's at that C level, while other parents might be a D level or an F level or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily tell the story. Right. The story of, hey, parent, your student is doing well in this. However, specifically, I need you to work on these specific items and help with these specific items that we're struggling with your student on. And I guess you guys kind of talked about that, but I was just wondering, just thinking about, where we're at, really wanting to assist you as much as I can as a board director to meet those 22-23 goals. Is there a piece, if there's anything that you would put additional there as far as engaging parents and really trying to help them understand, and specifically where their student is there anything that you think that you'd want to add to that? And I'm not asking you to, but I guess I just want to talk through that, because I think that I know that we don't talk enough about that parent family partnership, parent schools partnership, excuse me, and really kind of leaning into that. So I said a lot there. I'm sorry. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, last year we did not have a very big MCD booster parent group. And this year we have a larger parent involvement group, which helps immensely. What we noticed is we need to build that trust with families to come in. I am new to this district, this town, and I'm a new face, but Miss Wright is not. And so we're trying to get out there with the family events so they can have opportunities to meet us, to talk to us. Because what we need to do first, just like with the staff, is to create that trust. Because once we create that relationship and that trust, then we can say, would you like to volunteer? Come on in, I'll show you how to do it. And trust me, I try every time I'm at an event or in front of an audience. I'll say, I see every single one of you here. I know that you are able to come and volunteer for Monte Cristo. And I will remember your name because you signed in. I'll call you. I mean, we have to be very assertive encouraging them to come in, because there is this hesitation of, what will I be doing? Will I be expected to be highly involved with the academics piece? Can I choose what I'm going to do? So I was thinking we could also create a training session for our volunteers that would help them overcome that fear of coming into the school, and that we could add that as an action.
This is the first year we've been able to have parent volunteers in 3 years. And so I think not only are we getting used to that idea as a community, on that they can come in, they're welcome to come into our building, but also as a staff, we got to get used to the idea of having parent volunteers again and being a little bit more creative about how we can use them in ways that they're comfortable with. Do we want them reading with kids? Do we want them doing fluency timings? Are they cutting out, materials? When we can offer more concrete ideas of ways to be involved, that would be helpful. Our parent group boosters, our boosters parent group has been amazing this year, and have put on like our Apex fundraiser and some bigger events that has been drawing in people. They're getting their toes wet into parent volunteering. And so we're hoping that that can be a little bit contagious for them to realize how they can be involved.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. We have an event coming up tomorrow. Is skate night. Please get your skates. Join us at the Marysville Skate Deck. You don't have to be shy. We'll take pictures of you even if you're not skating. And if you need help standing up, students will help you. So please come join us tomorrow. And also we have another event on April 25th. We have our math night for families. So please, everyone here, come and join us. We would love to see you playing math games and being involved with our learning community. And I also want to share our parent survey that we sent out to families. Just some comments from the survey that we collected.
We had 89 responses. And if you think that a family might have 2 kids in our school, that's almost 20% of our building's families that responded. And I just made that percentage up. That's not accurate. It's rounding. But one of the questions, the first question we asked was, what's one thing you love about Monte Cristo Elementary? So we just highlighted a few, but it was really encouraging as administrators to see that families are enjoying their kids being part of our school community. So.
Oh, one example is, I would put your school up against any of the schools in the area. I am proud to be a part of the MCE family.
The friendliness of the staff. There has never been a time that I've come up there and I'm not greeted with a smile. We're new to the school and I already feel that I'm part of the MCE family.
I love how your staff are kind, supportive of each other and their students.
My child seems to come home happy most days, and the staff I've encountered are friendly.
So those are just some examples that we wanted to share with you of our families' comments, and that we are working very hard to recruit our families to come back into the building and to be engaged with academics and events. And I want to do a shout out to Director Peter Ledoux for making it possible that we have the Reptile Man coming in June. Thank you for doing that. Families are going to be thrilled that they can join. We appreciate your efforts.
I've got 2 more questions if you don't mind. Sorry.
No.
Just finishing up the last question about that parent student or parent school partnership. One of the things that struck me, I talked about this at the last presentation. There was a National Teacher of the Year who spoke at the presentation, and she talked about how one of the roadblocks that she saw to communicate with parents and kind of the communication methods of today is that as she went through school to get her teacher certification, and as well as being a teacher for many years, no one ever kind of trained or talked to her about how to communicate with parents, right? To how to do that piece, right? She just kind of, it's like, oh, the grades and stuff like that. So the only reason I bring that up is that she suggested that there's, coaches, there's training, there's things that you can do in PLC to kind of teach that skill so that teachers can kind of communicate that piece. And I was just wondering if you thought that, Joel, you were a teacher here, if you thought there was any value in that, agree, disagree, and feel free, by the way, I'm not expecting any answer. Feel free to disagree with me or whatever.
You're reading my mind.
Okay.
Because I just was in a conversation last week with our student support advocate that we're like, we need to like co-teach a class on how to communicate with families proactively to build trust and how to work on how do you pick up the phone instead of a text message? And how do you open those doors of communication at the beginning and just pour into the students and positive praise the students so the families feel open to then communicate with you throughout the year about any concerns or things they have. So I was actually just having that conversation. I haven't thought anything through past that, but there is a need. And I think our communication style has morphed and changed over the last decade in significant ways. And so we're adapting as we go, try to figure out what is the most effective communication style. Our survey actually went through quite a few and pulled where are you getting most of your information from? Is it Remind? Is it our monthly newsletter? Is it our Facebook page? You know, just trying to see where our families are getting communication from the district.
It's Remind.
Yeah. Yeah. One last one, I promise. This is my last one. And not trying to steal any thunder from Director Ledoux, but one of the things I always like is he talks about the audacious ask, right? The big thing, and I took the note that you said about summer school, you know, and the challenges there, but you know, that's the audacious ask is, you know, could we figure that out? Put money aside, all those things. Is there something that we could, you know, if we could figure out so that we could stop that summer slide? Is there any other audacious asks that we can do to, you know, not only help you meet your 22-23 goals, but provide a better learning environment or support you guys in a way that we currently aren't right now?
Long list.
You're free to email it to me if you want to.
I email it to everyone.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no worries. We can certainly do that. Ava, I'm not putting you on, do anything? Okay, sorry.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a quick comment to make. So I am frequently, as you're talking about the parental involvement, so I'm frequently emailing Paige and Joelle as the crazy mom. They get my emails all the time, and I have to commend them because they are incredibly quick and they are always on it and they are so supportive. And as a parent, it is greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate that. I mean, I sent out an email over spring break and was not expecting a response, and Paige, I mean, it was like minutes. She's like, oh yeah, you know. And so they are really amazing at the communication with parents and things like that. So I wanted to say that. And then off of what you guys had commented about trying to deal with the parent volunteers and let them know different ways that they can be involved. That's something that Dr. Mans and I are working on with our Family Advisory Council, named to be changed possibly. But we're working on a roadmap for parents so that they can know all the different ways. So if there are ideas or thoughts that you guys have as far as different ways that they can be involved, just send me an email because we'd love to hear that so we can add that into our roadmap for parents.
Thank you so much.
Director Dayton, you have
So you guys have covered everything.
I should drive everything.
Still any questions?
Yeah.
But I'll reserve those for the.
Dr. Milton, anything?
No, just thank you. I think one of the things that they brought up was trust and consistency. And one area that they didn't mention is when you do a new initiative, such as PLCs, you have a group that jump in right away. They're all in. You have a group that have a healthy skepticism. They need to be shown that this is going to work. And then you have a group that say, this isn't for me. And I think where they've seen so much progress is that there's much more commitment by those other two groups that are now jumping in, and they're all in. And so I think that's made a big difference. And you might, I don't know if you want to comment on that or if you disagree, but that from the outside, that's what I'm seeing.
Yes, it's true. And because of the systems that were created to make that possible through our district, that's the reason why our teachers are able to meet consistently. And then there's expectations of what it looks like. And there's accountability with the agenda and the minutes. And the fact that we are very visible in and during their discussions, that is also part of the team. We are the team with that.
Outstanding. Well, I really appreciate your time. Wonderful presentation. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the next agenda item. Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And remember about attending tomorrow for the state debt.
Skate down.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if there, before we go on, if there's any teacher staff, you guys want to go ahead and take off, feel free, but you're more welcome to stay if you want to.
Thank you.
Mr. B. See, you didn't shake my hand earlier, but that's okay. It's all right. No. All right, we'll move on to item 3B on the agenda, use of force report, prepared by Beth Mills. So it is prepared by, not presented, so normally when it's prepared by, essentially the board can ask any questions. Hold on, my screen died, let me get there. So do we have any questions? This is an annual report, Director Dan, that we get. I think by RCW, we have to discuss it yearly or don't we, or something like that?
By procedure, we discuss it annually. It's also reported to the state.
So are there any questions or anything like that? I've got one or two, so go ahead,
I've got-
Director Kincaid.
2. What is the difference between students restrained and restraint incidents?
So students restraint is the number of students,
Okay,
so per building. And then restraint incidents are the individual incidents of restraint. So for example, at the high school, it was only one student who was restrained 4 times.
okay, I gotcha. And then what is the out of district? What does that entail?
Those are students that are not enrolled in one of the 5 schools in Grand Falls, but are placed in an out of district.
And that out of district placement is one place, multiple places, or?
Well, the data kind of speaks to that. If you see the number of students that are in the report.
One student.
Oh, got it. Missed that piece. Appreciate that. I just wanted to ask a question trend. I wasn't able to pull up last year's report. Is this more or less? More? And so with that, I guess I was going to ask, in your professional opinion, I mean, is there any information to be gleaned from this? Does this, obviously none of this is positive information, but is there anything that you look at this and you go, here's what this data is telling me as a professional in this regard?
So this is the 21-22 school year. So there was definitely an increase in 2021 than there was, 21-22 versus 2021, given the number of students that we had in person for the entire year. Most of these are special education students. Most of them are students who are in a self-contained program. And we have some kids that are brand new to school who are learning how to regulate themselves and to be in school. And I can say that, our staff are trained to only use restraint when a student is at risk of causing imminent bodily harm to themselves or others. And that sometimes we report any incident, and that could be a student who's running into the street and we're restraining them to stop them from running into the street, or if we need to physically escort them from one location to another. So, that's my analysis.
Got it. So when we talk about staff injury while restraining and those types of things, as someone who had a family member who was a sped para, are the number of injury, not necessarily with restraint, but just in your kind of day-to-day interactions with students, is that reflected in here, or is it physically when you're using right response or putting a student in restraint or isolation?
This report is based on what is reported to the state. We also, if there are any incidences that are needed to be reported to our those would be in addition. If there was an incident where, say, a student scratched the teacher or bit a teacher, but they weren't actually like, restraining the student in return. We do have a different mechanism for that.
So that's not here. That's not reflected in
It could be the ones that are in here, but then there could be separate ones that are not involved, because we don't necessarily always restrain a student when they're maybe expressing themselves towards a staff member. We're usually intervening when they're going to be aggressive towards another student or themselves.
So is there any way where we encapsulate that data of staff that are injured just outside of these conditions? Because kind of no one specifically said this, but conjecturally, I get the feeling that that happens. I guess the era that was given is I would be surprised by that number. And I don't know, do we ever talk about that, or do we ever present a data on what that looks like?
I'm trying to
trends or stuff
recall,
like
but that is data that we can get you.
I mean, I don't want to, I think that's an important piece. I mean, obviously it's separate than this since it's a separate report, but I don't know, maybe in one of Beth's presentations, she can talk about that too, because I don't know if I've ever talked about that. And I also, I guess, want to make sure that we are addressing those. I mean, I'd be interested if that number is going up along with the amount of that's fed or kind of what it's doing. So just I guess dropping that in a hat. And then just one last thing, just because we've talked about this before, when you see isolation and restraint, can you just quickly just talk about what in the real world, what that looks like, just in case someone's like, you restrained a kid, you isolated a kid, like, what does that look like? Do you mind just real quick?
Right, so my example and definition of when a student is at risk of causing imminent bodily harm to self or others, our staff have been trained using the right response, and that might be it's a lot of personally identifiable information in these numbers, but I have the backup data here. And so, for example, walking restraint, escort, transport, we usually designate it as other restraint, but those tend to be like a two-person restraint, a two-person seated restraint. Those different kinds of things that the staff is trained to do. Isolation means that a student is placed in some type of enclosure that when they are not allowed to be. We often have students who just need to cool down, and they might be in another location, but they're allowed to leave that location. It's really just a calming space for that. So the definition of isolation is really when a student needs to be contained in one location.
And I don't want to get to, this just came to me. I know I said last question, I apologize. But this just came to me, and I'm trying to figure out a way to word this because I don't want you to provide any identifiable information, but I'm just thinking to Director Kincaid's board comments and behavior and stuff like that. And there's obviously one building that's had a lot of, well, comparatively speaking, more restraints, incidents, isolations, those types of things. Percentage-wise of the students of these 11, how many would you say have behavior paras?
Well, they might not have had them when the incident occurred.
Right.
Some of these are students who might be in our behavior programs at the elementary level. They might not have a behavior para, but they have extra staffing support allocated to them. It would take me a minute to go through this list, but I can get that to you.
Yeah, I guess I'd be just in the, because Mountain Way, data you provided before, Mountain Way has our largest amount of one-to-one paras. And I heard you say earlier that the amount has increased of isolations, restraints, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. If I'm wrong, please stop me. The amount year over year, we've increased like the number of these. So I guess I'm not drawing any conclusions. I guess I'm just interested to go, okay, so we've got the most support in this particular building. We've also got the most incidents in this particular building. So is that due to, because that's that one-on-one para is, you know, hopefully going to see those big behaviors, be able to calm those down before they happen. So I guess I'm just curious, are these 11 additional students that need behavior paras or already have behavior paras or something along those lines? I don't know if that's a hard question for you to answer. I'd just be curious to find out what that looks like. And this just literally came to me. I apologize.
To analyze the data, because it is 11 students,
We can,
it's pretty easy to be identifiable to anyone that might be listening.
yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong. Very good point. I'm completely catching you off guard. But we could be provided this information via email, right? I mean, we're employees, the board is employees of the school district, right? So we could be provided with this information in a non-public format to understand, couldn't we? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I
So,
think we can get you the answers that you're looking for.
okay, perfect. Any other questions on item 3B?
Just as I'm looking at it, just so that if I'm drawing a conclusion from what I see, you mentioned that people coming from a non-school environment, Mountain Way, I'm just picturing Mountain Way as the highest, Monte Cristo, and then the high school and out of district, it looks like. So one person that, and so like when we're looking at, is it from your professional opinion, it's just that they're learning how to be in a place and they're just kind of learning the behaviors of being in a public location. And when you're saying that it grew year over year, it's just, well, because people are still learning, maybe have a different curve. It seems to be phasing out. Like, I guess I'm just looking in your professional opinion, is it something that we should be concerned about? The growing number, is that a concern or is that pretty typical?
We were in COVID and
Yeah.
kids weren't in school, we
Yeah.
weren't restraining them, and then they had to come back to school and they had to figure out how to do school.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are managing themselves and
Yeah.
learning how to manage themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's not a huge concern as of the moment.
I think I would add to that. Beth and I were on a phone call with the people who are going to do our special ed review in May, our audit of programs, processes, and when this isn't necessarily about restraint, but just in terms of just some of the concerns at the early elementary grades, they're seeing that statewide, and they have done tens of these reviews. I think they've mentioned 43. So I don't think that would be.
Yeah, just making sure that it's not, I understand that reporting this annually and showing it to us is the requirement. I just want to make sure that what we're looking at is not like huge flashing siren. It doesn't sound like it is, so.
So on the idea of that, do we have an idea of how we compare to other districts as far as these numbers go?
We could look it up, it's public information.
Okay.
Was this data tracked pre-COVID?
Yeah, they started requiring us to report this in January of 2019.
So
Right, when we were going into COVID. Yeah.
The year is leading up.
18, we had a report on the 16-17 school year, or maybe it was the next year.
That's true.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I'm not sure why they decided in the middle of the year we had a report the previous year, but that's.
So with that said, the data pre-COVID, how did that look comparatively to what we're looking at today?
I have not looked at Granite Falls.
Just taking some notes to make sure. The notes I got is what we talked about, maybe getting some information on general staff injury report. Data on how many students had a 1-to-1 and the data compared to other districts. Was there something else that the board wanted to see? Okay. Outstanding. If there's no other questions, We'll move on to item 3C, business report prepared by Marshall.
Yeah, I think the main thing I would like to talk about tonight is start with projections to start our budget process. We use kind of a similar trend to what we've been using in the past, super conservative, where we just kind of roll every grade forward, don't add any students into the population, roll off the seniors. I accounted for some loss at 11th and 12th grades. We seem to have that every year. Just you seem to lose 11th and 12th graders, so I try to account for that. And then we put in a pretty conservative kindergarten class because there's some economic conditions that may reduce people moving in. There's a building moratorium in Granite Falls. So I reduced us back down to about 155 kindergartners. And I'm assuming no transitional kindergarten next year. It's kind of up in the air with where the legislature is on that right now, but just to be conservative, I put in no transitional kindergarten. And comes up with the 2275 as our projection. And I rolled back Crossroads a little bit. It's a conservative projection, but I think it's a good place to start to build the budget on.
Board, any questions on the report prepared by Marshall?
Where am I missing? Am I counting this right? So I just heard rollbacks from current, not any additions, but yet our total number is higher.
Well, because we have a small senior class, like our senior class this year is 90, is
80.
80. So,
Okay.
We're rolling on 155 kindergartens, we're rolling off 80.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay,
Just a little math thing.
okay. Yeah, math's tricky.
So, I'm Director Dane. So when we look at, obviously, students is what kind of drives everything based upon the way the state funds public education via what's called the prototypical school model. And so students equals teachers equals support staff, it just kind of rolls down there. So one of the most important things that we can do is really try to read the tea leaves as closely as we can here, because a bust, right? If we say there's going to be 2,000 students and we only have 1,900 students, well, you've hired teachers, you've set up a budget, you've done things based upon that. You're not going to get funded to that level, which now causes, right, a reduction after the school year has already started of, what are we going to do now? So the board historically, after, I don't know, what it was 5-6 years ago, where we really had a bad bust at an enrollment level, we've tried to be really conservative on setting budgets based upon, really not wanting to go there anymore of having budget busts. And even I'm probably even more on the conservative side, because I like, I would rather, and this is almost as bad, and I know Marshall will probably cringe I'd almost rather budget at a lower student level and then have to try to catch up with hiring teachers last minute. Now that presents a whole world of challenge, because at that point, what teachers are around? You might not have enough teachers. So now you've got overload, you've got all of these other things. But hitting this well really allows us during the summer and stuff to really kind of set up classrooms and stuff like that. I just wanted to give you that real-time information. Also, go ahead.
A good follow-up is that, we used this kind of methodology last year, and we came out with a budget of 2194, and our average year to date is 2224. So we're 30 better than budget, which is which is a great place to be. We're not having to hire a bunch of teachers at the last second. We are not under budget enrollment, because being under budget is the worst place to be ever. But we're not so far over budget that we're having to scramble to hire teachers. So I think the collaboration with the board and the district worked really well last year and came up with this number. And I think we used kind of the same methodology, even maybe a little more conservative this time, trying to account for the loss that we seem to be having with 11th and 12th graders when they become 11th and 12th graders.
And then from a, real quick, just because the fund balance currently is negative.
Yeah,
But can you talk about the 4.4 and how that is kind of at one point in time, just real quick, Marshall, if you don't mind?
I'm talking about the end of year fund balance or.
Yeah.
So last year we ended with our fund balance about $1.3 million. We built a budget this year to get us to $2 million, a little over $2 million, kind of fund balance is kind of savings account. And we've already kind of voiced that we're probably not going to get to $2 million just because of the needs of kids. If we have extra needs that require more paraeducators, more student supervisors, the enrollment generates how many of those we can have. If we go beyond what the enrollment generates, we have to pay for that basically out of fund balance. So we're carrying more paraeducators and probably a few more teachers than what the model generates for us. So in the state, we can't just say, hey, state, we have these extra needs. We need more staff members, so we need more money. They give us the money based on our students. And we have to use that money to staff our buildings, to pay our bills, all those things. So as coming out of COVID, one of the challenges a lot of the districts are having around us is that these needs of students are really high at the same point in time that the federal stimulus money is gone. And so we have all these high needs of students, but there's no extra money coming in to help us pay for it. So all the districts around us are having to deplete their fund balance to try and help the kids become students again.
And so obviously the higher fund balance you have, the lower that you dip, right? So which, I mean, this is all old hat to you, budgets and finance and stuff like that. So we're working really hard at trying to get that fund balance up so that we aren't negative $1 million, midway through the year. So it's a supreme focus. So
one quick follow-up. One of the unique things about a school district is our budget year is the school year. The state's budget year is the state budget year, which ends in June, into June. So the state likes to show a very healthy fund balance when they close out their books in June. So they give school districts the least amount of funding in May and June. Then they give us the most funding in July and August. So our bills, because most of our 90% of what we spend our money on is staff salaries, and our staff salaries are generally spread even throughout the year. We have these dips and valleys based on how the state decides to fund us each month. And in May and June, we get really low amount of money, but our bills still stay the same. So that's where the fund balance helps us ride through those low months. And on top of that, we have very heavy cost of special ed here, some really high need students. The state doesn't fund us for that during the school year. We have to say at the end of the school year, hey, we have these kids that we're spending all this money on. We would like to be reimbursed a portion of that money. We don't get that. We have to spend it all throughout the year, but we don't get it until August or September. So, and for us, that's $1 million. So we're spending this $1 million throughout the year. We don't get it back until September. So having really a $2.5 million fund balance is probably where we need to be to stay healthy all year long with our reliance on safety net and with the way the state funds. We probably get 30% of our revenue in the last 2 months of the school year, yet those are probably our 2 smallest months of bills. So it's just kind of goofy the way that works.
all right, any other questions or anything? Sorry, board, I hope I didn't belabor that. I just wanted to, this is the only area we can all talk together. So I just wanted to make sure I was giving as much help as possible for you to understand kind of what we're talking about. All right, let's move on to item 3D, superintendent report presented by Dr. Middleton.
Just a few things to share, and I'm going to start by saying that superintendents have a saying that they never fully unpack their boxes. The average tenure for a superintendent in the United States is anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years. And so when you find a district where you can be somewhere for 5 to 8 years, that's a real win. I started in education in the 85, 86 school year. It's a long time ago. And we have just come to the conclusion, we're ready to unpack all of our boxes. And so in the packet tonight is my letter of resignation for 14 months from now. And I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. One, some personal reasons of making a transition. But professionally, when I was at my last stop, I was part of a fall search. And it was probably the best transition that I had in the different districts that I've served in. They advertised in September, October, and I think by December 7th, I was hired for the following school year. But the real advantage was, one, that district was one of the first ones out in their search. And my predecessor was similar to me. They were ready to retire, ready to move on to do different things. So, you have that luxury of knowing ahead of time. And for me, as incoming, that superintendent was extremely gracious. He included me in a number of interviews for incoming administrators for the following year. He allowed me to be involved in some of the cabinet level discussions. I ended up moving there early so that I could just even be more ingrained into the community. And so I felt like that was a real gift for me. And it's something I'd like for this community to have as well, that instead of waiting till, traditionally it's anywhere from February to, May and June. But occasionally you'll have these situations where, ahead of time. And so ultimately that is your decision, what you want to do. But I just wanted to offer that now so that you do have a lot of planning time. You can find the right search firm and really just have intentional community input and do it with a lot of time ahead of schedule, or ahead of that July 1st, 2024 start date. In 2019, one of the first things that we talked about as a board was what I called the 3 C's, what I saw the needs were, and that was cash, culture, and curriculum. And I'm so grateful for this community to recognize the need that we had for curriculum. We hadn't adopted a full-scale curriculum in years. And so now with $500,000 in that levy dedicated just for curriculum, that's a real win for our students. And so I'm excited that we've done a whole K-12 adoption of math. We've done some sort of spot checks this year in science and language arts, but next year, I'm not sure which area we'll be adopting, but we're going to get on to that regular cycle because of that funding. So I feel really good about that. Cash has been certainly up and down. We are better off than we were. And I think I've shared with a couple of you in scouting, and I was a scout. You leave your campsite better than what you found it. And so that's always been my professional motto, that, I'm going to leave a district better than what I found it when I came. And so cash has always been a challenge, but we've certainly made some improvements there. And culture, I think we were at a point where people weren't talking to each other. There was a lot of animosity among labor and management. And I'm really proud of the inroads that we've made there. But looking at the next 14 months, and I want to say this to the public and to the board, the foot doesn't go off the accelerator. I don't believe in a lame duck. We have a lot of work to do. And so I really like our focus has been these last 14 months on academic achievement, that has been the focus of our principal presentations and school presentations, and that we're talking about data all the time. We'll continue to talk about cash, culture. We've spent a lot of time on safety. We continue to look at some of the processes, and I'm like you, Director Kincaid. I'm tired of the reaction. It's time to be much more proactive, and processes are one way of getting to that level. And also sort of this mindset. I've stated when I first came that we don't want to be 5 different islands. We want to be one continent, and we continue to work on that. And so that we use the word our instead of that school or the district or the high school, but it is our schools, it is our districts, they are our students. And we'll continue to work. Our relationship with the associations are, I think, really healthy, and I'm proud of the work that we've done there. One of the things that, one other area that is very proactive is our facilities. Last night, we had our first community, not our community forum, our committee meeting of the facility master plan. And we had 20 people highly engaged in talking about what makes Granite Falls, what are the strengths, what are the areas we want to improve on, what makes Granite Falls School District unique. And on top of our architects from BLRB talking about what some of the needs are and going building by building. It was a 3-hour meeting, but more than 3 hours, but we had that whole group really engaged. And so it was really exciting. That's meeting 1. They're going to be one more. Next one is in 2 weeks from yesterday. And we're going to be just clicking away on those agendas. And it was a really healthy cross-section of Granite Falls who were there. It was not all just staff, it was community members, all ages. We had people who had been here for 47 years. We had people who had just moved into Granite last year. So really, really good. And then finally, succession. As I just talked about the search, that will be a really healthy process. And again, it might be, I don't think it's early. I think it's going to be good for our district, but I just, again, want to assure you that the foot stays on the accelerator. We're not, nothing's going to loosen up because of my plans. We have our strategic plan, and I'm going to continue to fulfill that. I always try and talk about one safety thing, at least one safety thing in our report. And so I just want to say we did go ahead and sign that contract with E3, which is the phone app. And this Monday, the 17th, all of our principals and one building secretary will be trained on that. And then we're really looking at it rolling out in the fall, but we're going to get trained now and then do a staff training as we get into fall. So that's going to be really a great tool, and will really ensure our safety for our students and staff. So.
Did you have anything on the end of year events, or maybe I missed that?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
No.
Board questions, comments?
Sad for me to hear you putting your resignation on the night that I am starting on the board.
All because of you.
But I look forward to working.
Yeah, likewise.
And I know Dr. there's going to obviously be a lot more opportunity to say a lot more things, but as one of the 2 current board members that brought you on, you have really moved the district forward, and I really appreciate the time and the effort that you've put our students and our families here in the district. And, it's certainly sad to see you go, but I'm excited for this next phase of your life and stuff. And you've been, when I look back at my time of being a board director, bringing you into this district is certainly going to be one of the high points. So thank you for that. Anything else, board, Ava? By the way, when I maybe I shouldn't call you by name, should I say student rep or something? Because I always feel bad, like I'm putting you on the spot. So I just want to make sure you're included in the conversations and stuff. Yeah. Good?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, fine. I'm gonna find a better way of doing that. All right, so moving on to item 3E, board reports. Do you want to start with community, Director Kincaid?
Sure, because I don't have much to report today. I have to apologize. I haven't been super active in the community the last few weeks. I'm at my last few weeks of grad school and student teaching, and it's taken over my life for the moment. So I don't have anything to report tonight.
No worries. Director Ledoux on WIA.
Yeah, just keep in mind spring sports, right? So we've got boys soccer, girls soccer, baseball, softball, tennis. So, get out, support the groups. I know, so tonight there's boys varsity, but that game is probably done by now, or at least about to. But Friday we've got girls tennis, we've got softball, we've got baseball, all at South Woodby. So, if you feel like traveling, getting on a ferry, get out there, support everybody. That's about it for me today.
Awesome. And I'll do legislative report real quick. So the outstanding things that will have some significant impact to our district are, it does appear that there will be some impact, and I'm reading the tea leaves, nothing is for sure yet. Some positive impact on the SPED funding level, potentially the 13.5 to 15%. Or at least that seems to be kind of what I'm hearing. I actually heard today, and I don't have a lot of detail, that something went through on the free meals.
I didn't hear yet, so.
I heard just as I was walking in, a bunch of emails came through and I wasn't able to actually read it. So maybe there's something there, which would be outstanding. I'll get more detail about that, provide that at the next meeting. Then I talked earlier about hopefully the bar staying at 2,000 students and us all being able to get safety net funding quarterly, which will really help that cash flow and all the things that Marshall talked about. Those are the high points right now. Any questions or anything, Ledge report? Anything? Okay. And I went through that super quickly. Do we have anyone signed up for items from before? Guessing not.
No.
Okay. All right, item 5A, unfinished business, none. All right, moving on to item 6A, resolution 2223-10, Washington State Funding Special Education Senate Bill 5311. Dr. M, do you mind talking about that real quick while I get logged in?
Right. This is something that Director Veach had wanted to bring to the board. And I think she wanted it at our last meeting, and she contacted me, and we had success in that, I believe, and wanted this to be brought up again. There are a couple of bills in the House and Senate. The Senate bill certainly has the greater positive impact on our school district, and she is asking that we endorse that bill with this resolution.
So this bill is still active and there is still potential. Obviously, bills can get changed and amended and stuff like that. So certainly something I think will help clearly say to our representatives that, we certainly need some help. That this doesn't get us all the way, but it gets us, I guess it's forward movement. I've heard WASDA and other people say it's a down payment on the other responsibilities that they have. So certainly something that I think that we should support. So is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution 2223-10, Washington State Funding Special Education Senate Bill 5311.
Thank you, Director Ledoux.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Director Kincaid. All in favor? Aye. Perfect. Any opposed? No? Okay. All right. Outstanding. That passes unanimous. Item 6B, recording and streaming of school board meetings. Do you want to speak on that one too?
Sure. We have been recording our school board meetings since COVID and now required to do that, our regular school board meetings. We really haven't had too many special meetings, but we did with our special education conversations recently. And at our first one, because there hadn't been that precedent, we didn't. But I think there was some informal conversation of, why not? Well, let's be very transparent with our community. And so I'm supportive of our study sessions or special board meetings, that they also be recorded and streamed.
And just out of curiosity, Dr. M, is there, because I know one of the things I heard post pre-COVID was, oh, well, there's a lot of cloud space, you have to record these meetings and stuff like that. But since then, I guess if there's anything good that came out of COVID, a lot of boards have transitioned to kind of this video recording. And I've heard kind of conjecturally that via YouTube and stuff, there's really no cost impact to us because YouTube kind of archives and stores these. And maybe I guess what I'm asking, is there any cost impact or any negative
It wouldn't
impact?
be a hurdle to do this.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to make sure we weren't doing something that's going to cost us money in the end or something along those lines. And really, we're only talking about special meetings, right?
that's correct.
Any other questions for it? So I think we still need to do a motion on this, right? Yeah, motion to approve. So
Motion.
go ahead.
I will motion. That we approve recording and streaming of school board meetings.
Outstanding. Motion's been made by Director Kincaid. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Ledoux. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Outstanding. All right. Item 6C, first reading to amend policy 6210, authorization and control. I'll open it up to discussion. If you guys allow me, I'll talk a little bit about this because I wrote this. So the board spoke previously that we wanted to put some more safeguards in as for purchasing and stuff like that, to kind of just include the board in the discussion of any purchasing contracts, contracting services, hiring, those types of things. This is the culmination of the board really directing me to create something. So that policy 6210, if you click on that, that is essentially what I wrote up, and that has been reviewed by legal and has a lot of kind of their recommended language included in it. What's really wasn't approved by legal, but or actually, hold on.
This is a little bit.
Yeah, this is different than the one that I sent out. There's some stuff that's not redlined that was redlined previously. Is that on purpose or?
I just downloaded the one you sent as a PDF.
You said
It should, so there's 4 on there. One should say markups at the end.
Yeah, I'm looking at the marked up one, but I thought that the one that I sent out earlier.
It didn't have any red, it was all blue. One you sent me.
Hold on. Item 6210. Policy.
I mean, it was in red, so
I think what you have in red is on blue on ours.
right.
Yeah.
when I downloaded it to the PDF.
One reason I'm looking is maybe okay. Yes, I was, that second dollar amount, I was like, did I mean to leave that in there? And I did. Okay, so, but the point I wanted to make is that $20,000, I just dropped in there. And that's one of the things I think that we need to talk about today is if $20,000 felt like the right number, and I'd love to hear Dr. M and Marshall's input in that, because certainly the intent isn't to make the process cumbersome or time intensive. However, to just get the board involved, and a lot of times we don't have to have a specific agenda item to discuss this. It can be included in consent agenda and stuff like that, and we can just approve it as part of the consent agenda. But just to pause there for a second, Dr. M, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm comfortable with this. I've been in districts where, it's 50,000. I've been in where it's been less. I think what's important is, if something is budgeted and we have that in, approved by the board, then to me, that's okay. That's a green light. We can proceed. But I'll use the example of iReady, which was, $38,000 purchase 4 years ago in the middle of the year. It was brand new. And I mean, it's a tiny amount when you consider a $34 million budget, but I felt like it's different from what it's new to the board. It's new to this district. So I brought that to the board because I thought, yeah, I do want their support and their endorsement in the expenditure. So $20,000 is, I think that's fine. That's and I've seen that pretty common in other Washington districts.
Yeah. This has strictly to do with commercials for like vendors, not necessarily head count, correct? Or does this spread over into?
Well, I think, if we're hiring a staff member as a district employee,
Mhm.
that does come to the board
Yeah.
for approval in the hiring and consent agenda.
Yeah,
I think what this is we have some unusual purchases that we need to make, like a great example is when we decided to fix the lights that were buzzing
Yeah.
in high school, that cost, $48,000.
yeah,
Bringing something like that here and saying, is this how we want to spend our money?
okay,
The one clarification I would like is that, we do our budget during the year, we set up, it's gonna cost us $190,000 for electricity. It's gonna cost us $110,000 for sewer and water. It's gonna cost us $140,000 for gas. We have all these POs that get set up because for these kind of services that we have that, I don't know that I feel like it would be an overwhelming amount of things to really look at for the board.
Yeah.
To try and approve all these kind of things that are happening every year, but meet that threshold.
So is there a recommended change that what I hear you say, Marshall, is that stuff is included in the budget.
Right.
So why that's over $20,000? Is that something the board wants to see? And I would answer no. I mean, you gotta pay and I'm reading the language as you were talking, and it doesn't specifically say that. So is there something in here that you would want to add that clarifies that, makes that crystal clear for you? Or do you feel like this is good enough? Or
I feel like if we have conversational agreement, I think I'm okay with that. There's the chance that at some point in time, I will be in my position and all you guys will be in your position and some random person will be looking at this policy and interpreting it differently though. So maybe.
well, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, I'm thinking about this now. It says all contracts, the power bill, those things, that's not a contract. That's just a bill, right? So we're talking contracts, things where we're.
It says requisitions though, so we create requisitions for all those things.
Okay.
So that, I guess I was more on the requisition piece.
I'm reading, where do you see? Oh, that's in the second paragraph. Board approval for purchases of capital outlay items is required when the aggregate total of a requisition exceeds 100,000, except the superintendent shall have the authority to make capital outlay purchases without advance approval when it's necessary to protect the interests of the district or the health and safety of the staff or students. The superintendent needs to exercise the option. Notification of the board will be made as soon as possible. And that part, by the way, I think it was in our old policy. I think that was, sorry. I think that was, hold on, correct me if I'm wrong. please. Let's see, what was GFSD policy? Authorized direct expenditures, purchase of the budget for approval for requisition. Yeah, that's all language from our original policy.
But I guess I can say we haven't been following that. We want to come to you to approve the power bill.
I mean, obviously I can't speak for the board, but I would continue, I would say that, you know, that you would continue as you have, but
Okay.
on those types of things.
Do we have, I haven't read the procedure, so forgive me. Do we have something in there about if there's an emergency?
That
That they don't have to wait for a board meeting for us to approve something if there's.
it looks like it's,
Is it-
the superintendent has the right.
Superintendent shall establish appropriate purchasing
Okay.
procedures as a means of monitoring the expenditure of funds, staff up against districts, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, when it's necessary to protect the interests of the district or the health and safety of the staff
Okay.
or students.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, I see that. Thank you, thank you for.
Director
pointing that out.
So, and I never want to put words in your mouth, but Dr. M, it sounds like you think $20,000 is a good number
I
for
think that's-
contracts and stuff like that.
It's consistent with other districts and this is a first reading too. So,
Yes.
both Marshall and I can do a little bit more research and if we see some things, just like the five of you. So I'm okay with this as a first reading.
Okay, Marshall.
Yeah, I think
Um,
20,000 is fair also.
okay. HR, I know you engage in contracts all the time with employees, contracted services.
My only question was to Marshall would be, and then maybe to the rest of the board would be, for our contracted services employees. I know we have a line item in the budget for those services. Every time we hire a contracted employee, do we do this first? Because I know that some of those.
Yes, that is a-
That's what I was.
That's a great question. I would say yes. And the reason why I say yes is because technically every other employee hire has to go through the board before it's officially hired. So I would say yes, that the board, if we're bringing on a contracted service, that gets technically board approval for that person is brought on.
Yeah, and I have been putting the individuals that we hire from an agency on the personnel report. But we haven't been putting like the dollar amount, so this would be, we have to get the dollar amount approved and higher than that. Correct?
I'm repeating what you're saying. So you're saying that you would give a requisition essentially for the dollar amount, right? And that would get board of approval. Then you would go out, find that person, and then the person would need to get board approval then. So essentially two approvals.
Right, but I guess I don't, Beth does more of the hiring, more of the hiring for them. Like, do we know on average, this type of employee is $96 an hour? Or does it just depend? So will the contracted services cost vary enough? I guess that's my question. Are you gonna know the dollar amount this person will want to hire in enough time to go to the board? And then, get the board to approve it and then hire, and then still be able to hire them?
I think Jennifer's question maybe is something around that there's a lot of competition for employees at some of these agencies. And we often have to act quite quickly to lock them in or else they'll go to another district. It would, understanding that we may need this position and we can't hire it, we can't find it anywhere else, would knowing after the fact and having a why we did it sufficient for things like that. Similar to, I'm gonna speak freely. I feel like when we hire someone onto the district, they have a pretty secure idea that they have a job before they get approval from the board. There's always that chance that the board could say, well, there's something wrong with this, let's not do it, but that's extremely rare. Would being transparent that this is a contracted services employee, this is the cost of that employee, giving that to you in a similar manner after we've already kind of have an employment contract in place, would that be sufficient? Or There's a risk that we would lose the agency employee.
I think, wrong terminology here, but I think if there's like some sort of like a net 30 in there, right, where you can bring them on and then there's official approval then afterwards, right? Because then if we see and we're like, why did we hire a school nurse at $200 an hour? No, we're not going to approve that continuing going forward. Then, right, because it's a contract. I don't know what the contracts, are we doing month to month or are they like 6-month contracts that we're doing?
I think many of them just require 30 days cancellation.
Okay. So then, yeah, then I feel like if the need is there, if we can't fit the need, then we can retroactively, or I guess, yeah, retroactively approve when they come through. That would make sense.
Yeah, that, I guess that was the question I was gonna ask, is give me a better idea of the process, like if we identify there's a need, I guess, are you telling me that there are situations where we identify there is a need, we find someone and we hire them all on a Monday? Or I'm just using Monday as an example, right? It goes like that quick, like boom, 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 or is there?
Because I don't want to speak for Beth, I'm gonna speak for Beth. I think what happens a lot of times is we know we need, let's just say, use the nurse situation. We know we need a nurse because they have a student that has a delicate medical condition and requires a nurse based on their 504 plan or whatever. And so we get this nurse in place and we have a PO set up for this nurse. We send it to the board for approval. We've already hired the nurse, but then 30 days later, we decided that maybe this nurse isn't working out. Or maybe this nurse has decided to take some other assignment and we need to replace the nurse quickly. A lot of these things are that situation where I think we are replacing like person with like person using the same agency, but we have to create a new PO for it. We have to, because it's now assigned to a different employee, different person's name. I think that's a lot of what is happening. We know the needs at the beginning of the school year. We may have positions in place at the beginning of the school year that last the entire school year. Those are easy to get approval for up front. But when we're having to get a student that moves in that has a delicate medical condition, we have to get service online quickly. We hire them, we come to you for approval after we've already committed to them, because it's really competitive.
And that approval is net 30 is what I heard you say, right? So you essentially have to tell them within 30 days, yeah, I'm sorry, we're not.
I believe a lot of the agencies require 30 days notice, is that correct?
Yes, even though there have been some instances when we have said this behavior is intolerable, please don't send this person back.
There's the ability, if they are not performing their job function, that 30 days can be reduced.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we're saying the same thing. So in what I think I hear you doing, you saying is in that situation, the board would get it because there aren't very many situations. I don't think anywhere we have a board meeting separated by 30 days, right? Or correct me if I'm wrong. And so the board, I just didn't want the board to be a checkbox, but it sounds like we still have authority to go, yeah, sorry, for whatever reason. I saw this person on Cairo News last night and they're, they slapped 3 children at the last school district. Why do we have this person here, right? Nope, but we're not doing that. And the board can, it comes in front of the board can say no, and then we can make those changes. It sounds like that. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
It sounds reasonable that if we've already approved the position and the position's filled and then becomes vacated, that you have the authority to refill the position without having to come back to us, but then to come back to us retroactively and say, we've hired to replace this is the person, this is the resume, and give us the option to look at it. But I think that the district itself needs to have the ability to react to those positions. If the board's already approved a position that should be filled through the year, we've already funded the position. I don't see any reason why there would be any constraints on the administration to fill those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we all?
Yeah.
And like Dr. M is saying, this is just a first reading. So we certainly can make some changes if we need to. And Dr. M, I welcome you doing your research. And if you come back and like, hey, Carl, no, 30 is a better number. So please feel free to do that. Okay. If there's no more discussion, we're ready for a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the first reading to amend policy 6210 authorization and control.
Motion's been made by Director Ledoux. Is there a second? Hey, Bill's seconding his first motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Forward, outstanding. 6D, retire policy 1438. You want to talk about that too?
I can. We adopted the WASDA policy 1400, which included audience participation, and we did that in November. At that time, we probably should have retired this policy 1438 because all of those elements are in 1400.
Okay.
So my recommendation is to retire this policy.
So I'll open up to discussion. So just to be clear, we still have a policy for participation and items from the floor and all of those things. We aren't saying that we don't want that. We're just retiring a redundant policy that's covered in another one.
1400 covers that mechanic. Yeah.
Outstanding. Okay. Any other discussion? Someone want to make a motion?
I move to retire policy 1438 audience participation.
Killing it, Director Kincaid. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, motion been made, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, consent agenda. Were there additions?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So since there are additions, we'll need a formal motion. Actually, I always forget that even as acting chair, I can make a motion. So I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the additions.
Second.
Yes.
I think one of the additions was a new resolution.
I don't think that's in consent. I think we're gonna have to do that on the 26th, or is it in consent?
It is in
Oh, it is?
consent.
Okay.
Local resolution
All right,
final.
thank you.
But it's being, we've made a motion to approve that with the additions. Are you saying I'm missing something or?
Well, I mean, it was a kind of a lengthy resolution is to approve the financing of the going out for financing of the
Okay. Is there anything, motion's been made and seconded, so we're still okay to have.
It's ceremonial. I mean, we've already talked about how we're gonna finance the turf. This is just what the Snohomish County treasurer needs in order to put us out to bid for financing.
Got it. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded by, well, actually, I second, yes, okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Motion.
Carl motion and Peter second.
And pass unanimous. All right. That is the end of the agenda, so I will call the meeting close at 8:12. Sorry about the long meeting, guys. Great job. Thank you. I promise Director Dane, these aren't all.
It was weird. It went really, really good, but it was on Zoom, which is like, but like 3 of the people in the hiring committee were all in their cars, like driving